rise with us and observe a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before us next, we have the approval of our agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
We have a motion to approve our agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, the vote before us is to approve our agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Use the same sign. And our motion is approved. Next, we have approval of our board minutes from the last workshop. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the minutes for April 10th, 2018.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Before us, is there any discussion? Seeing none, before us now is the approval of our minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. And this is our public time for our public participation. Before we begin, I've got a statement I'd like to make. And I'd like to give a quick overview of how we have arrived at this point in time. And as our Council Bluffs Community School District and Communication Workers of America negotiation teams participated in a federal mediation session on April 11th, 2018, and they have reached a mutual agreement. During this session, the union brought forth a proposal that included several permissible items, all of which are in the tentative agreement before us this evening. In consultation with the negotiator, the CWA requested a 2-year agreement. The district team agreed. Longevity, as applied in current agreement, the district team agreed. Wage adjustments for changes in job classification, as defined in the current agreement, and the district team also agreed. Stipend for those completing professional certifications or specialized training as defined in the current agreement. The district also agreed on that item. In addition, the CWA requested wage increases of 1.5% in both years. The district team agreed to 1.5% the first year and 1.2% the second year. During this negotiation process, we appreciate the work of both negotiating teams to reach this tentative agreement. As we enter in our public participation, we have 2 listed members of the CWA that wish to speak before us tonight. First off, I have Kathy Schrum. If you are ready to speak, would you please find your way to the podium and state your name, address, so that we can get that in the public record. And you have 5 minutes then to present your words. Okay,
I'm Kathy Schrum, 1072 10th Street.
thank you.
I would like to thank all of you for the work you've done. I'd like to thank all of the negotiators. I realize that you guys pretty much just vote on what the negotiators decide, and you can give your thumbs up or thumbs down. I think we all seek to understand each other's point of views and work for the best of everybody. We all want the same things. We all want the same growth in our community. We all want consistency. We all want quality. We can all be winners in this negotiation by working together. We want to work primarily for our students, for our kids, for our community. Our children, our students, our community, and our actions speak louder than our words. What we work for, our students, our kids, our community, is what we're negotiating about. The heart of our community begins in the heart of every man, woman, and child. And I picked that up actually in the quote from that statue outside by Will Cather. If this contract is agreeable to everybody, then I think we can all be satisfied. But if not, I would ask that all of you think and maybe go back to the table and rework our negotiations. I know you guys are all sick of this. We're probably all tired of waiting and wondering what's going to happen. But this is our security. The community is our security. Our kids are security. And by having a strong community, strong kids, strong school system, we'll have a stronger country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, I have a request from Rita Tarks, and if I'm not saying your name correctly, please correct me.
My name is Rita Tarks, and I live at 101 Kestrel Court. I am reading this on behalf of all CWA employees in the Council Bluffs Community School District. For several weeks, we have been at these board meetings. We have pleaded with all of you to leave the permissible items in our contract. We have expressed our love of our jobs, the love of the kids we work with, and the dedication we have to continue making our schools a better place for our students. We told you how many of us work 2 jobs, not because we want to, but our dedication to those kids is worth more than the bottom dollar, and we will work a second job to make ends meet before we leave for a higher paying job. We have stood in front of you and told you how the contract between us keeps things fair and how this contract protects you as well as us. We have expressed that in the days where we go home mentally beaten, asking ourselves, how can I do this again tomorrow? We know we have a contract to protect us that many don't. A contract that has been negotiated over many years with the best interests of both parties. We have the security to know that we work for a district that values each employee enough to bargain in good faith to negotiate a fair and reasonable contract that works for both the district and the employees covered under the CWA. We understand the changes in the law and how difficult that made negotiations this year. We also know that the law did not require the CBCSD negotiating team to strip our contract of everything. We no longer have rights to representation when discipline may be a matter of record. We no longer have the right to grieve any issues. The grievance policy works to the benefit of both parties. We have been able to sit down and resolve any issues through the grievance procedure. We understand and respect your wish to have everyone follow the same handbook. We feel if you're willing to put them in the handbook, why can that same information not be put into our contract? If the vacation schedule is going to remain the same, what would be the problem with leaving it in the contract? We know you want consistency within the employees. Currently, the exempt employees follow the same guidelines as we have set in our contract, for the most part, with the exception of the leave policy. A few weeks ago, the board asked us to trust them. Trust is a very fine line, and many of us have issues with trust. Trust is earned. Trust is something that takes years to earn and seconds to lose. We want to trust the school district as well as the board. It is difficult when we feel our concerns go unnoticed. It is difficult when we voice concern that employees will be leaving if the contract is stripped, and the reply we get is, Burger King is hiring. It is also difficult for us to trust when we ask why does the negotiating team insist on stripping the contract, and the reply we get is, because we can. The state gave me the right, why wouldn't we? We want to work with the district and the board. We want what is best for our students. We want what is best for our employees and our community. We want to be able to tell our friends, you should apply at the Council Bluffs School They are wonderful to work for. However, we are not there yet, not today, but we could be. In the end, our team negotiated and came to a tentatively agreement on a 2-year contract with a 1.5 and 1.2% base increase and longevity. We put our trust into our negotiating team and feel there was nothing they could do to better the agreement for us. We are accepting of the 2-year as well as the base wage and longevity, but we feel we were totally stripped of everything else, which is very disappointing. We have many unanswered questions, many issues that we will never understand. We are asking the board to put yourself in our shoes. Please try to understand our frustrations when looking for answers as to why. Please try to understand our fear when it feels as though everything has been taken away. Please try to understand our desperation when we feel as though we are fighting for everything we have ever believed in. Please try to understand our disappointment in a board who are elected by the citizens and who has all the power and is choosing to sit back silently. You can help us rebuild this relationship. You can table our tentative agreement and insist that the permissible items are put back into our contract. Together, we could be a great team for our students, our community, and for each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Glenn Hurst has requested. If you are prepared, please step forward. What's that? Not here, okay. Scott? You're on the list here, and he would have called in. He would have called in. Okay, so then if they called in, you have 5 minutes then.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Scott Putney, and I live at 4105 Gladbrook Drive. First off, I guess I want to address your opening comments, Mr. Kazar. I guess usually questions are pointed toward to the president. Are they pointed directed to you today? Is that
Yep.
Is that correct?
I would
Okay.
be the acting chair, yes.
Okay, so just to make a comment on your opening statements, to say that the CWA got everything that they came in and they wanted is totally false.
I didn't make
they
that
were-
claim.
Okay, you claimed that they got everything that they asked for. What was your claim then? I'm sorry. Maybe I misunderstood.
There were 4 items that were listed by the CWA that they wished to include in the contract, a 2-year agreement. That was put together by the negotiator and the CWA team. Longevity was something that was reached between the negotiator and the CWA, and the district's negotiating team agreed with that. Wage adjustments for job classification, and then also stipends.
Okay.
Those were the 4 items that the CWA
But they weren't the
worked
only
together.
items, correct?
This is what I have in front of me, and these were the 4 items
Under-
that
Understand.
the proposal
So just
was put together.
For clarification, those weren't the only items they came in with. They had all the permissives they wanted left in the contract. Your negotiating team forced them to withdraw or take those off the table. So they wanted all those items left in the contract, and they were not allowed. So just to start off, I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the employees of CWA, covered under the CWA contract. They are asking the board to direct your negotiating team back to the negotiating table and direct them to include the permissive items in the contract. Direct them to not go into the arbitration process, but to reach a peaceful solution that includes all items allowable by law in the contract. Trust. The lady before me spoke a little bit about trust, and the board has spoke a lot about trust and wanting these people to trust them. Trust is something that's earned. The district negotiators are trying to strip away everything these employees have worked for years to achieve under the false pretense that it is against the law, when the law clearly allows these items to be left in the contract. It is not against the law to leave the permissives in the contract. When asked why the district is doing this, the only explanation that negotiators could give was because they can. Because they can. That's not a good reason. What is the reason why we are taking all these things out of their contract? And that's not the way we treat people we care about and we value and we want to trust us. During opening proposals, the CWA team brought up the point that without these safeguards in the contract, people will leave and go to other districts where they actually value their employees. To which the CB team replied, Burger King is always hiring. Burger King is always hiring. Is that the way we value employees? That's demoralizing. It's regrettable that I'm even saying that, but that statement devalues our employees, and it's the direct reflection of how is that the direct reflection of how the board feels about their employees? Does the board feel like our employees are disposable or easily replaced? There's been a lot of misinformation spread, so I want to cover these 4 points real quick. One, if voted down or tabled, this contract does not automatically go to arbitration. We contacted Susan Bolte from PERB today, and she gave us a legal reading saying if a tentative agreement is rejected by one of the parties, I'm sorry. This is, I guess it didn't print good. My bad. I have this. I know I can send it to everybody on the board. I know a few people on the board have seen this. Filing for an, let me read it again. If a tentative agreement is rejected by one of the parties, yeah, it's cut off. I'm sorry. So it doesn't do me good to read the whole thing. Basically, her statement is the board has several different options. They do not have to go to arbitration if it is rejected. If the board either votes it down or tables it, the board can make that decision whether they send their negotiators to the arbitration process or not.
That's time, Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next on my list is Brady Matney. Okay. Once again, Brady, are you present? Okay, we'll move on. Next on my list is Jean Klein. Okay. Leanne Hughes. And Militia Shudak. Okay, well, that's on my list. Next up,
Melissa Stephen Shudak, 120 Ivy Drive. I'm going to continue on with the misinformation being spread, and I think I'm in the right place. Let's see, the board's role in the negotiations. You have the power to direct the negotiating team. They're not the ones in charge. You guys are. We've told you guys this repeated times. You, the board, are in charge of what happens in negotiations. Union leave was the next one, and is not political leave used for training union business is allowable under law to remain in the contract. I'm not sure there was some writing on there. If I read it right or not. The district has never made clear during board meetings why they are removing the permissive items. That's definitely a question I have. I think that's a question that we all have. What is the reason? This is coming from Scott. He said he has supplied all the documents that outline what is allowable to remain in the contract. He wanted to know if you guys reviewed it. Was there any discrepancies? If you all say you don't want to change anything, then why are you removing them? So just trust us. I asked you, President Author, who's not here, would you trust someone who talked to you that way? Would you trust someone who continues to spread or false information? Am I on the right page? Okay. Next was, our employees are not happy with this agreement. This is not what they want. Certainly not what they're voting for. The board's lack of properly instructing the negotiating team has forced them into tentative agreement that they do not want and are not happy with. Let me be clear, the CWA is not entering into a tentative agreement because they wanted to. It's because they were forced to. The board's inaction to our repeated calls to take a stand against this has resulted in a TA they are not happy with. TA,
Tentative agreement.
got it. There are things they have agreed to that they have agreed to that were forced on them. They are satisfied with the 2-year term and the wage increase. This is not a monetary issue. This has never been about money. It does not cost the district anything to leave these permissives in the contract. In fact, CWA offered to take less money to keep the permissible items in the contract. But we're told no by the district's team. Why is the district set on taking these items away? We have been telling you that for months, but you are not listening. Will you listen to us today? Why can't this board understand that you are the boss of the situation? This is addressed to the president again. Mr. Arthur, do you understand that whatever happens with this contract is on you? You can't blame the state or the negotiators or the legal team. You are the ones making the decision, and I totally agree. You were all elected to make these decisions as for what is best for the district, its employees, and its students. And the agreement is not what is best for anyone. We are all relying on you to make a sound decision as to what is right and just. If you allow this to happen, you are responsible. The employees are asking you to direct the negotiators back to the table and to include items that are legal in the contract. Are you going to refuse? If I had an employee that refused to do their job as instructed, I don't think I would want to keep that employee around very long. Article 1 is something that I'm not sure what this is. Recognition, defined by the job description who is covered under the bargaining agreement and recognizes CWA as the sole bargaining representative for all of those workers. Why is it important to take this article out of the contract? Article 2, board's rights. What is the reason for eliminating the board's rights out of the contract? Huh? That's good? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Is there anyone else? Those who have not called in ahead of time will have 3 minutes to make their comments.
My name is Diane Dushanic, 2536 Avenue H, Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Thank you.
I am a paraeducator. I have been a paraeducator for 17 years. This has been a long haul. I know that you guys have gotten a lot of emails, a lot of comments. I myself have written some emails. I appreciate those of you that responded back to me. You are hearing all of these things because it is a very, very important matter. The children that we care for matter to us. They would not get to where they are if it was not partly because of what we do. We put our heart and soul into what we do. They matter to us. Do we matter to you? That is my question. Do we matter to you? If we matter to you, please think about what we are asking for. Please.
Thank you. Next, state your name.
Jeff Shudak, 120 Ivy Drive. I'm going to finish that note from Bonnie that Scott was reading about from PERB. Good morning. Pursuant to our conversation, if a tentative agreement is rejected by one of the parties, one of the representatives may file for interest arbitration. However, filing for interest arbitration does not mean that the impasse will resolve by an interest arbitration. The parties can meet and resolve the impasse prior to filing the interest arbitration or prior to interest arbitration. If the parties are not successful in resolving the impasse and proceed to interest arbitration, the only impasse item for the arbitrator is base wages. The arbitrator can decide permissive impasse items if both sides agree to take the permissive impasse items to arbitration. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Susan Bolte. I have a couple questions for the board. I guess, Mr. Chairman. Define who is covered under the bargaining agreement and recognize CWA as the sole bargaining representatives for all those workers. Why is it important to take this article out of the contract?
We're not in a conversation for discussion. We listen to your comments, and that's what we do. If we start a dialogue between people in the public participation and the board, then we are in violation of open meetings law because we have not listed those items that would be in discussion. So our response is that we can't comment because we would be violating open meetings law as stated by the state of Iowa.
Okay. Article 2, Board of Rights. Another question for you, Mr. Chairman. What is the reason for eliminating the Board of Rights out of the contract? Wouldn't that be something you would want left in to clearly define your position within the district?
And again, we would be violating open meetings law if we conduct a dialogue.
Union rights and responsibilities, visits by union representatives.
Again, we
Has
cannot
this
comment.
ever been a hardship on the district?
Again, we can't comment because we'd be violating the Iowa open meetings law.
Non-discrimination. Do you wish to discriminate people based on whether they are a union member or not? If the answer is no, then why are we removing this section?
We are violating open meetings law if we entered in dialogue.
50
Union
seconds,
leave.
We're
Scott.
willing to pay a $7,000 fine for each infraction of the Iowa open meetings law.
Right, I have 11 more seconds. Rights for representation. Is it your intent to not allow employees to representation by their union? If not, then why is it being removed?
Again, we
Let me
can't.
guess.
Yeah, right. Unless you want to pay my $7,000 per violation of the open meetings law, I'm not going to answer that question for you. Next up, please, take the mic and state your name.
Jill Shudak, 1123 East Washington Avenue, and I understand that you can't answer these questions, but these are questions we want you guys to think about seriously, okay? So Article 6, grievances. For the duration of the contract, we utilize the grievance policy, which works well for the benefit of both you and as the district and the union. Is it the board's choice to eliminate the grievance policy? If you remove it, do you have plans in place to deal with issues between the staff and administration? How do you plan on ensuring fair and honorable treatment of all employees when there's no grievance procedures to protect their employees? Is there any protection for the school district and the employee in the event of a he said, she said issue or a he said issue? Without union representation, which essentially protects the district as much as the employee, during the investigation, how do you plan to deal with wrongly accused employees? Are you possibly opening up the district for lawsuits that you currently would be handled in the grievance procedure? Are you guys prepared for the potential legal issues in the event of a wrongful termination? For Article 7 in seniority, 7.2 and 7.3 are removed due to the state law, which we understand, but 7.1 and 7.4 simply defines what seniority is, when it starts and when it's terminated. 7.5 requires the district to supply a seniority list of employees to the union. Is that a burden on the HR department? Why can't that be provided? really to email to a union representative, what's the harm in leaving those three provisions in the contract? In Article 8, hours of work, it defines the normal hours of work and what constitutes a work week. What is the board's motivation with deleting this article? Are there plans to change the work schedule for employees? If not, why would you even remove it? For Article 10, dealing with holidays, and Article 11 with vacations. If the board's intent to keep vacations and holidays the way they currently are, again, we ask, why are you removing it? The handbook can be changed at any time. It is not a contract. Article 12 deals with leave of absence. The CWA has agreed to change this to reflect what the CBEA contract. There's no reason to remove it from the contract. It is still also in the teacher's contract. These items in this contract that you want to eliminate cost the school district nothing. Based on that, and that the fact that they are willing to give up their raises to protect their permissible items that can legally be left in our contracts and have zero cost, but this obviously is not a budget issue. Other than the state gave you the right, and what the benefit is at the end of the day, will the district see to justify in shattering the morality and the loyalty of your many dedicated employees? Thank you, guys, and please think about those questions.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Gorman, 203 Fifth Avenue here in
Good evening,
Council Bluffs.
Steve.
I would like to speak in behalf of the CWA workers and urge this board to listen to their grievances of this tentative agreement. I think it would be wise and it would be just if we would table this tonight and allow this conversation to go forward in a manner that could bring some solid closure to this that would work for both the CWA and this board and the school district itself. One thing that a community doesn't need is unhappy employees and a workforce that is full of anger and distrust. I've worked as a city employee my whole adult life, and I've worked under contracts, and I've worked through the negotiation system with the permissibles that have been taken out of this contract, and it's worked well. We have happy employees. We have security in our jobs. We can take care of our families. I, as a firefighter, we were exempted out of many of these problems that the state put down onto you. But that doesn't mean it's right. I get up and go to work and do a dangerous job. So do the teachers. So do the CWA workers in these buildings. Schools have a record these days in the public for being in very tragic situations. Take this into consideration. Table it tonight, go back to the table, and work together to come to a conclusion that's going to be good for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one else, we will close this portion of our public participation, and I'd like to thank you, all who have made comments. We will definitely take those under advisement, and we will be discussing our tentative agreement between the CWA and the Council Bluffs Community School District later in this evening. Next up, Dr. Murillo, you have a report for us.
Thank you, Mr. Kozar. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Ostrowski to the mic to present our student recognition for this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We are pleased tonight to be able to honor some students, and I would love it if Dr. Murillo, our superintendent, would join me to present some special awards to students. We're going to start tonight with our students from the Tucker Career and College Center who participated in Health Occupation Students of America, or more often referred to HOSA. So the Tucker Career and College Center students represented our community at the Iowa Health Occupations Students of America Spring Leadership Conference in March. Students who placed in the top 3 of their category are eligible to compete at the HOSA International Leadership Competition. We want to recognize each of them tonight and celebrate their accomplishments at the state level and wish them well in Dallas, Texas in late June. The students tonight are joined by instructor Patty Pettit. Want to give a wave, Ms. Pettit? Tucker Center Principal Kyle Forney and Administrative Assistant Beth Adams from the Tucker Center. So I'll read each student's name along with their state achievements and have Dr. Murillo present the Student Star Award sponsored by our Community Education Foundation. Students, would you join me at the podium as your names are called? Okay. Colton Jones, 3rd place in pathophysiology. Kelsey Cruz, 3rd place in extemporaneous health poster. I understand Emily Thompson has another commitment tonight, but she received 1st place in team forensic science. Now the next students have earned medals in more than one category, maybe 3. Jose Soria, 1st place health career photography and 2nd place team health career display. Peyton Bernards, 1st place sports medicine and 3rd place human growth and development. Emma Brown, 1st place medical terminology, also 2nd place team health career display, and 2nd place extemporaneous writing. And Kylie Cruz, 1st place team forensic science, also 1st place home health aid, and 2nd place nutrition. Students, we're going to get a group photo of you, but while we do that, Dr. Murillo, would you like to recognize the parents tonight?
Diane and I are still working these kinks out. If you are parents of the students that are up here, would you please stand for us so we can recognize you?
Congratulations again. Oh. And if you see any notices of fundraisers coming up, Ms. Pettit, so they can support their trip down to Dallas, right? Many of them coming up. Okay. Thank you. All right. It is my pleasure to introduce to you another group of students who have earned the designation of All-State in the Iowa Speech Contest. These students with us here tonight are among the best of the best in the state. In order to qualify for All-State, these talented teenagers have advanced from district to state and had judges deem the performance as outstanding. In a typical year, approximately 400 performances make All-State out of an original 9,000 entries. Dr. Murillo will present these All-Staters with our District Student Star Award, again sponsored by our Community Education Foundation. First of all, Kelsey Hansen, 2nd year All-State, expository address. Kelsey? Nick Hotz, large group ensemble acting. Olivia Cooper, large group ensemble acting and individual original oratory. Patient Cave, solo improvisation. Patience is also part of our Thomas Jefferson High School musical theater group that made All-State speech. And we're going to be sharing with you the names of the other members of the ensemble. And we're going to be presenting them tonight with a star keychain as collateral to the student star that they'll be receiving later this week. They get an extra bonus. So, Patience, would you accept your keychain from Dr. Murillo? Timmy Ginn is not able to join us tonight, but he and Oleksiy Lakai are both members of this distinguished group. Cassandra Higgins. Bradley Krug. Raylan Nelson. And Ashlyn Wiley. Congratulations to these young people as well as their coaches, Dirk Waller and Abby Custer. Dr. Murillo? You bet. Dr. Murillo, would love to shake the hands of our parents represented here tonight of these talented young people. And again, parents, do not be shy if you want to come up and get close-up photos. Mr. Waller, are you going to come up and be in a photo? Or Ms. Custer? You guys worked hard too, right? Did they not work hard with you? Okay. Perfect. One more, hold on, one more. Right, got it.
Thank you for all who participate in our extracurricular activities, those who are coaches and sponsors. We appreciate what you do on behalf of the students of Council Bluffs, Carter Lake, and Crescent. Before us now, we have our resolutions. We have 5 items that we intend to address. First item is setting a public hearing for the 2017-18 budget amendment. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I will move to direct the secretary to advertise a public hearing to be held on May 22nd, 2018 for the purpose of a budget amendment for the 2017-18 school year.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Seeing none before us, we have a resolution to set a public hearing for our 2017-18 budget amendment. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
And I did open up online voting. Mr.
Thank you.
LaFurla,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes. Next up, we have a series of job descriptions to approve. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve 2 new job descriptions, junior district accountant and clinical supervisor of student and family services.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
These are new positions. Are we substituting some other person's role, or are we adding staff, or what are we doing here?
These are not new staff. We're repurposing, redesigning the job description to better fit with the need of the district.
So it's current employees.
It's
what you're
current
saying.
employees
Okay.
that we're just redesigning. There's not new employees. One's in Mr. Hamilton's area and one's in Mr. Wilson's area.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Seeing none, we have a resolution to approve the listed job descriptions. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes. Before us next, we have first reading of policies. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the first reading of the policies as presented. The 508, authorized interviews of students by non-school employees. 904, tobacco-free, nicotine-free environment. 908, public gifts to the schools. 913, expected conduct at school-related activities. And 914, public conduct on school premises.
We have a motion to approve those policies for first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, before us we have a resolution to approve policy 508, policy 904, policy 908, policy 913, and policy 914 as a first reading. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes. Before us next, we have a policy, a resolution to approve policies for a second reading. And also included in those policies, we have the administrative rules. Those only require one reading for the approval, so there are policy procedures that are included with the policies themselves. Do we have a motion?
All right. I move to approve the second reading of the following policies. And then, so 503, foreign exchange students, 5031, the SIET standards for student exchange programs, 520, student records, 520.1, request to release records, 520.2, official request for record of suspension or expulsion regarding student, 520.3, notification of rights under FERPA for elementary and secondary institutions, 520.4, student library circulation records, 604, religion in the schools, 604.1, request for exclusion from school program, 605, religious holidays, 610, non-school team participation, 616, review and/or objection to instructional materials, 616.1, reconsideration of instructional materials, 616.2, request for reconsideration of instructional materials, 618, use of information resources, 618.1, use of information resources, dash regulations, 619, school libraries, 624, student promotion and retention, and 803, naming school facilities, and then the first and only required reading of the corresponding administrative regulations.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve second reading of policies and first reading for regulations. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, before us we have a resolution to approve the second reading of the listed policies and the administrative regulations. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes. For us next, we have the CWA collective bargaining tentative agreement. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020 Communication Workers of America Local 7103 Collective Bargaining Agreement as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have a couple questions. Some of the items that were in the contract are not necessary now because the laws have changed. Is that correct? So the remaining permissive items that Mr. Putney provided us a couple weeks ago are the ones we're talking about. And with the CWA, 4 of those permissive topics are now in the proposed contract. Correct. Now, my other question relates to the policies we're moving to the handbooks. Does that language change from what was in the contract that goes to the contract, to the handbook?
So they're not policies, because they're an employee handbook guidelines, so they're procedures. Because like, you just approved a bunch of policies, and those go through the policy committee, and that you guys do the first and second readings on and the approval as they go through that cycle, on their yearly cycle when they come up for review. We are working, most of them, simple answer is yes. A lot of them are very similar to same, but what the goal is to make sure that all employees are the same, no matter what work group they're in, whether you are an administrator, whether you are CWA, SEIU, exempt, a principal, whatever it means, you treated the same.
So, if I understood you correctly, you're saying the former language that was in the contract is now in the form of a policy instead of a handbook?
Procedures, in the employee procedures guide.
So does the board approve that?
That is the commitment Dr. Murillo gave you at the last board meeting.
So if there's going to be any significant change in the current language, we have to approve that?
That would be correct.
And that's a yearly basis or something like that? To me, that gives some assurance that we just can't willy-nilly change. You can't willy-nilly change it. It's still the board's responsibility to approve any changes you might suggest.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
As an example, we're talking about the grievance procedure. Is that an example of
Yes,
permissive topic that would be moved into a handbook?
absolutely. And so we'd have the same process for everybody, no matter what type of employee they were. So we ensured that those due process rights that are allowed under the United States law, that we are providing to every employee in the same manner.
Any other discussion? I guess I had a question was brought forth that why is the CBEA different? And from what I recall is we entered into a 2-year agreement with them, and we're in year 2 of that 2-year agreement, so we can't change the wording of that 2-year contract until it has expired.
That is correct. And they made the changes. We proposed all that and did all that before the law changed last year.
Right. So we can't make those changes because we would be violating the contract that we agreed upon with the CBEA
That is correct.
at that time. Okay, I just wanted clarification.
And I want to clarify too, we're in year 1, next year is year 2 of that 2-year agreement with CBEA.
Mhm.
They have one more year.
They
That
have
is
one more
correct.
year.
Okay, we're completing year 1.
Right.
That, the years they don't line up. Okay. Any other discussion?
So I guess this is just another so this contract is it's the 2-year contract, correct?
The proposed
Yes,
collective
okay.
bargaining, yes, it would be
Okay,
for 2 years.
so this is the 2-year one. So then next year around this time, that was when, because SEIU had a 1-year contract, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so they would be up around the same time as CBEA.
That would be correct.
Okay. I wanted to clarify that.
Toby, just so for clarification, then the reason that the majority of the permissives are being left out of the contract is for fairness across the board to all
Yes, and
employees?
that, because they're going to be placing employee procedures guide, which the board will approve, and also some of the other things that you heard mentioned actually are covered by the law, federal laws. So they have those assurances also in the law.
And then the grievance procedure guideline in the handbook
Yes.
will be used to, I realize we haven't had any recent grievances over contracts,
Actually, we haven't had any grievances filed with CWA since I've been a member of the district.
but then that grievance procedure in the handbook will be used to file agreements if something weren't honored in the contract.
Absolutely, because we want to make sure all employees feel that they have the right to, if they feel like they've been, have an adverse situation, that they have due process to be able to have that resolved.
Thank you.
Any
Another
other-
comment I'd like to make.
Please.
I'm old enough to be around before we had collective bargaining with school employees, and we had a process called meet and confer. Now, obviously, the intent was to get the employees' input on what the policies should be, but the board had final say what it would be, and essentially, that's where we are right now. So my question is, if we want to make changes to the handbook, we're gonna ask our employees for input on that before we make a decision?
I'll let Dr. Murillo answer that question.
When we think about the employee handbook and we think about changes, it would be something, just as we have a committee that serves on the insurance, for us to look at insurance and to look at changes. It is something that as we move towards the handbook, if there would be any drastic kind of changes or something, we again would be having some communication, whether it be through my town hall meetings or special meetings with certain groups that the change might affect. And certainly keeping, just like after every board meeting, we send out information to our teachers and our staff that work. After every superintendent roundtable, we send out minutes from those meetings. And then the town hall meetings, and then anything else that we either do through via a video or an email, we will definitely have the employees and the employee groups that are affected by any change in the loop. It won't be something that's done and then we just post it. We are this year going to print for everyone to have a certain number of copies in the building, asking the principals in the fall to walk through the handbook with every new employee will receive a copy going forward every year when they begin in the district. So we will do and take a lot of steps to ensure everyone, the best part will be the consistency across the district. And instead of having to pull a different handbook from whichever group you're talking about to try to give an answer back to, and to get everything unified, will make the district just a lot more seamless. Ensuring that all staff members are treated fairly and equitably.
So we'll have one handbook for all employees?
Yes.
Right now, we have 3 or what?
Yes. 3 collective bargaining agreements and a handbook and kind of some things that apply in the handbook to everybody. So it's hard for employees to know where to go, so this will make it a much more user-friendly thing for all employees.
Makes sense. So I take it from what you replied, Dr. Monroe, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question, just on the idea of this handbook. Is there anything in this, I'm just seeing, just because of the variety of types of employees that we have here, would that cause any kind of issues there, just in terms of all these different types of structures and stuff I'm trying to,
So I
sorry.
think what you're trying
Yeah,
to ask
I'm
is,
just,
due
yeah.
to different types of classification of work or different types of employees, there are different sections in certain portions of the employee handbook that would, if there are special work rules for that group, that would apply specifically to them, and those are denoted in the handbook. So those people know exactly what will apply to them.
And then, So like some of those things, obviously, they're very specific to whatever. I wouldn't want anything, obviously, to give you too much hassle there, but you don't see any issues with that at all?
No, and actually there's numerous places within the educational facilities around the country and in outside entities that have handbooks like that work, and they just have special work rules for each group.
So this handbook also applies to administrators and exempt employees?
From Dr. Murillo on down.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I guess, just Dean, is there any actual, like, cost at all to the district from, like, removing or keeping anything in the handbooks that you know or can tell me about?
Actual cost?
Yeah.
No, not really. As Toby pointed out, the reason that we are suggesting that we move it to employee handbook is because there are items already covered in federal and state law. It's just redundant putting it in there. And then the second item is we want to make it consistent across all employee groups. We've had issues where people were given erroneous information because it was different in every area. So we're trying to make it consistent across all groups.
So what would be the process if this contract is not approved tonight? What would happen? You know, it's, as a person who's not familiar with union negotiations and has never worked in a union before, I'm a reasonable person, but I sort of struggle to understand if two parties come to an agreement and sign the agreement, why I would vote against it. And part of this is, you know, hearing everything, but I also would like to know what would happen, what is the process after tonight if it's not approved?
It's a great question, Mr. LaFerla. We're a little surprised too with the conversation tonight, knowing that when the mediator was here, we felt that a fair agreement had been met and that both parties were pleased with the outcome. So when we did speak with the mediator, and today we did call legal counsel to see, the next progression for us would be arbitration, because we have moved forward, we've reached an agreement, and then to circle backward is not the progression in the order that we would see that needed to take place to get the contract completed. So it is our hope that it will pass by the board and pass by the CWA members, and that we will move forward together.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
If it goes to arbitration, who makes the final ruling?
To the arbitrator.
And neither party has a recourse like they used to?
The only way to have recourse would be, you would have to take it through the district court system. And so otherwise, arbitration is final and binding, and there are very small constraints in which an arbitration award can be overturned or even heard by a court of law.
And so CWA members vote, and what happens with the outcome of the vote?
I've been informed that their vote is later this week. So just the way their bylaws, my understanding, how they have to set up the vote and the timelines they had. So their vote will be after your vote this evening. And so we should be hearing, I would think, potentially within the next few days.
I'm sorry, my question is, if, you know, the contract agreement does not pass a majority or whatever their bylaws state is required, what happens at that point?
Well, we would reach out for legal counsel,
Okay.
and that would be our next steps, and then bring back what we were advised to the board.
I just have one more question. I think it was in the email that someone had read, but is it actual, like, so an arbiter, this is just for clarification for me, does an arbiter only do the base wage as the only thing they discuss, or the things that were mutually agreed upon? I believe it said that some of the permissibles could be included in that arbitration, or do you know what that would be?
So there is different provisions, but the only thing that we're required to go to arbitration on per the state law is, and the parties pose the question to the arbitrator, so each side would frame their question to put before the arbitrator what they think the question is for them to decide. And then we would present factual evidence.
And then for an arbiter, is it still the arbiter has to choose what one party presents or another party presents and choose one or the other? Or is it just a blanket what they decide?
In my experience, you can get what they can do one side or the other, or they can find kind of a middle ground, but typically there's parameters that they're guided by.
Thank you.
Refresh my memory, with the other union, SEIU, didn't they vote on it first before we did?
They did. Or no, I'm sorry, you're right, SEIU, yes. CBA voted before you did. SEIU, you voted before.
We voted first, okay.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss? Okay, before us, we have a resolution to approve the 2018-19 and 2019-20 Communication Workers of America Local 7103 Collective Bargaining Agreement as presented. Mr. Wilson, would you call the roll, please?
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes?
Mr. Minshaw?
No.
Mr. McGlade?
No.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes. And our motion is carried. Next up, we have the items under the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll for the resolution to approve our consent agenda?
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes.
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw?
Yes.
Mr. McGlade?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes. And with that, our business is complete and we are adjourned. Thank you very much, Board.